This is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast, your source for the strategies, systems, and smarts you need to turn possibility into purpose. Every week, we dive into dynamic conversations as our host, Nicole Greer, interviews leadership and business experts. They're here to shed light on practical solutions to the challenges of personal and professional development. Now, here's your host, a professional speaker, coach, and consultant, Nicole Greer.
Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. This is Nicole Greer, and I am here with George today. Look at this book we've got in the mail. George is so generous. He sent me this book, Superperformance, 8 Strategies to Reach Full Potential for Yourself. Start with yourself, people, your team, and your organization. See, it's a cascading effect. You got to start with the individual. So let's hear all about George. George Pesansky is a recognized leader in operational excellence with a career spanning more than 30 years in performance optimization. Hello, I think he's going to know what he's talking about, people. So listen up. Executive coaching and systematic improvement. Oh, it's all about the systems, isn't it? Get stuff in a row, get your ducks lined up. He's trained and coached over 10,000 professionals. He's exhausted, but he showed up here anyways, across 6 continents and helped Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits alike drive measurable results. He is the founder of Capacity to Care, don't miss this, a nonprofit encouraging super performers to donate their talent, not just their time, to improve outcomes in their communities. Known for his clarity and his candor, and you all know I love truth telling, honesty, and candor, and hands-on approach, George is now bringing his best practices to readers everywhere in his amazing book. Get it now on the Amazon, everybody. It's a Fast Company Press book. It's Superperformance. I'm so glad you're here, George. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. So first of all, I want to know about your nonprofit. This is so good, getting people with the ability to perform into their community. Will you talk a little bit about that? We might want to know about that first.
Absolutely. I think it has such value for communities, especially for those nonprofit missions that they're sometimes struggling. They are always trying to make do with the resources they have. And if you think about the bottlenecks that they may experience, in some cases, the donations they receive, the money that they get, or even the time that people give them doesn't really allow them to fix those bottlenecks. So when we donate our talent, we can sometimes really address these issues and really help those nonprofits have more capacity to care and to be able to get more of their mission out to more people. So we really love helping communities, helping people find those nonprofits, and then help them with all of the process improvement work that we talk about in Super Performance, but also, really anything that they bring to the table as well.
That's fantastic. All right. And if somebody wanted to get started in their own community or they wanted to see what other people were doing, where would we point them to? And you won't go there now. You're going to listen to George first, everybody, and then you'll go there later. But where would they go to find out about donating their time, their energy, and their super performance to their community?
Yeah, our company website, myblendedlearning.com, has a contact us. But if you hit the contact us there, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to help you.
Oh, that's so good. All right, everybody. So we'll do that. And of course, this down in the show notes. Just go down there and look. Okay. All right. So this book, Super Performance, 8 Strategies to Reach Full Potential for Yourself, your team, and your organization. I absolutely love that. So the very beginning, you talk about on the path to enlightenment. And so I love that, George, because I'm all about building a vibrant culture and it's all about light. It's about waking up, smelling the coffee,
Yes.
turning the lights on. What's going on in here? So, will you talk a little bit about how someone gets on the path to enlightenment?
Yeah, one of the concepts that we kind of open the book with, that's in that chapter that you mentioned, is something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect that
Yeah.
your listeners may have heard of or are familiar with. And the path to enlightenment is never linear, where it's just kind of a straight line to that ideal state. And the Dunning-Kruger effect kind of points out that we often start to overestimate our abilities. And when we reach a point where we realize how much more we have to learn, how much more we have to do, and that we may not be as good or as successful as we could be, our full potential, is where we really start to get onto that path of enlightenment. And my story of finding my initial kind of Mount Stupid, the place where we kind of
Right,
think
I
we know
love
everything.
that. And he's talking about
It's
what's on page 7 right now, everybody. This is so good. Mount Stupid. Go ahead.
Yeah, my moment on Mount Stupid really taught me how little I knew and how much I had to gain from listening to my team and really, kind of focusing on trying to make tomorrow better than today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so this Dunning-Kruger effect is you've got this Mount Stupid, and what that means is I think I know everything. And then you figure out, oh, I know what I don't know. I just found out that I got schooled, I guess, right? Into the valley of
Yeah,
despair. And then slowly we go into the slope of enlightenment. I will know more tomorrow than I know today. And this is going to increase our confidence and our competence. Yes?
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That ability to kind of recognize that there really is no end to the journey, but the journey is worth the prize.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ringing a bell with Carol Dweck's, growth mindset kind of thing, right? I don't know everything I need to know yet.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So you have a Venn diagram, and hello, all you Venn diagram lovers, listen up because I love a Venn diagram. On page 12, he's got the super performance Venn diagram. And so, will you talk a little bit about your super performance Venn diagram? Because all of the nerds that listen to this podcast love a Venn diagram.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I like being really visual. For my day-to-day work, I basically spend all my time coaching and supporting people, and I have kind of this magic pen that I draw with that really helps me with illustrating. It's like a whiteboard. I can never go into any room and see a whiteboard that's white. I have to then start drawing on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love this particular Venn diagram because I've drawn it in so many places. And it really is about kind of finding the sweet spot around three really important questions: the what, the how, and the why, how these things all come together. And when you have a vision, so you know kind of where you're going, you have, a strategy, kind of how you're going to get there. And you also are kind of positioned for being able to execute, being able to deliver. You can answer those three questions. And that really is this sweet spot that we call super performance.
All right, fantastic. So imagine in your minds, everybody, or buy the book on page 12. It says
Okay.
vision, right? And it overlaps with strategy and then action. So tell me again the three questions.
Yeah, the what and the how and the why.
Yeah,
If you think about having a clear vision, you know what you're going to do.
right.
If you are able to execute, you know how you're going to do it. And then the strategy is going to be what you're going to do. And of course, the vision is going to be why you're doing it.
Yeah, okay, very good. If we repeat, we learn, don't we, George? I mean, I got to
Yeah.
repeat to
Yeah.
myself all the time. Okay, all right. So the very first thing you talk about is the vision. Like, what are you going to do, right? So tell me a little bit about vision. You kind of bring in this baseball rule, 5.05 parentheses A parentheses 2. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really amusing story from my childhood. I think when you think about what the outcome is that you're trying to arrive at, what is the goal you're trying to have? The analogy is if you think about a kid's sports team. In my story, it's a little league game. And, the coach is focused on winning and kind of telling all the kids that if we score more runs, if we stop striking out, we're going to win. And if we just are able to do those things, we would succeed. Well, having a vision around being able to win the game is often measured by these lagging indicators, like the scoreboard in a little league game. But in order to win, in order to achieve that vision, and this kind of comes back to the Venn diagram,
Hmm.
you've really got to be able to look at the leading indicators, the things that you can control. And a great coach is going to teach the kids to kind of raise up their elbow so they don't strike out, or to keep their eye on the ball so that they can catch that fly out to the outer field. And that ability to focus on the indicators that help us perform, that strategy, and then the ability to execute is where all of these things come together in this sort of beautiful way. For me, what I found was my ability to understand the rules was my contribution. It was my, ability to deliver a little bit on that how to help the team win.
Yeah. So if I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I want to cast a vision for my future, for my personal life, my career, how do people actually go about that? Oftentimes I'll ask people this really powerful question, George. I'll say, what do you really want? And they're stumped.
Right.
They're just stumped by
Yeah.
this question. And that's my TED
Yeah.
talk I have out there is what do you really want? And I've been trying to help people for years. So what's your strategy to get people to get into this thing of thinking about what do you really want?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about in the book is this concept of pseudo self-actualization,
Mm,
that you think you kinda know what you want, or you think you're going to reach a level of success, and you end up not really living up to your full potential because you set your goals too short. You kind of determined this definition of success was not really your full potential. And you stop trying as hard because you've gotten to that short term goal. So when you think about a vision, in my opinion, it links directly to potential. And it's not about, a particular goal like a promotion or being able to buy a home or something that is relatively attainable but very short in its duration. I think you need to think a lot longer about a
mhm,
vision in terms of, what your real potential may be. What are those things that you're really great at? What are those things that you love? And what would it look like if you achieved the ideal state? If we ask the question, what's your ideal state?
mm.
What is the ideal outcome? Not what you think you could do or what you think is even possible, but what's ideal? To me, those are great starts for the conversation around a vision.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love what you're saying. A lot of times I'll talk about the lifeline. I'll be like, here's your past, here's your present, there's your future. What are you going to accomplish before you pop off the planet? So long term, I'm all about it, all about it.
Yeah.
Now, you use this concept in the book called the golden hour. Will you talk a little bit about the golden hour?
Yeah, it is by far one of the most transformative concepts that we have used for the last 30 years in our practice, and we
Nice.
certainly lay out in detail in the book. And it really is about leading indicators. If you think about, really any kind of company operation, we work a lot in manufacturing. We often have scoreboards, just like the little league team does. And it is kind of the total throughput, the amount of downtime you have. We often measure the things that we're not doing well. The idea behind the golden hour is focusing on those periods of time where things are going well and you are achieving that success, even if it's for a very short duration, even less than an hour. And we often don't give ourselves enough time, effort, or energy to ask, what is the root cause of my success? What is helping this 10 minutes, helping this hour be golden?
Mm.
And what are the things that I can do to make that golden hour 2 hours and
Woo.
make it 4 hours? Can you stretch and extend that? You clearly still have to work on your weaknesses and on your problems, but I think many businesses, many organizations, many teams spend all of their energy on the glass being half empty and how are we gonna
Mhm.
fix these things? And while they're doing that, the glass is leaking. All of the things they've already got are actually leaving because we don't know why, and if we don't know why, you can't sustain what you can't explain. So therefore, those things slip through our fingers.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think we have a bias for problems instead of opportunities. We're always looking
Absolutely.
at what's not right instead of what's going correctly, right? So there's a little bit
Exactly.
of strengths finders can also slip over there. All right, very good. So in your golden hour, so I guess I could just look back over the last week or so and say, when was I cooking, doing great. What was going on there? What skills, traits, what was going on in the environment, and take a look at that, analyze that. That's so good. All right.
Yeah.
So put that in your pocket, everybody. Golden hour. All right. Now, one of the things that I love in your book is you have in chapter 2, I just love the title. It's a very simple title, but unlocking potential. And I tell the groups I work with, George, all the time, like I'll have teams and I'll be like, look at the people at your table and I'll make them uncomfortable. And I'll say, I mean, like, really look at them, look
Yeah.
deeply into their eyes, and they're
Right.
like, okay. But, really, everybody I know has untapped potential.
Yes.
Oh, let's
Yes.
get it out of people. So, will you talk a little bit about unlocking people's potential? You've got some great stuff to say about that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, the point you're making is the metrics matter.
Oh,
And an analogy, kind of a story that I often tell with teams is, if you were going to have a medical procedure and there were two doctors you can go to, one just graduated from Harvard Medical School, the very top of their class. They went through their, kind of internships and so forth and residencies, and they've come back home to practice medicine, first week on the job. And the other's a small town doctor who's been here 30 years and went to the community college and went to the state school, but has basically practiced this exact procedure for 30 years without any problem at all. Which doctor would you choose?
oh, I think the guy that's done it for 30 years, he's got a little muscle
Exactly.
memory.
Exactly. Exactly. And this goes to the heart of potential and the heart of diversity of potential, because you could easily look at the 30-year doctor and say, well, that wasn't an amazing school you went to, or you went to the community college, or you've been practicing in this small town and not necessarily achieving these outcomes. But you also can have a flawless record in a very complex procedure, which makes you truly the best. And that really is fulfilling your potential in practicing medicine. But if I had a son or a daughter who decided they'd like to attend medical school, who am I going to take them to talk to?
Oh, you're going to try to get that kid in Harvard, right?
Exactly, because the kid from the Harvard Medical School has demonstrated their potential in achieving all of the possible success in attending medical school. They haven't yet demonstrated, kind of their proficiency as a physician, but they absolutely demonstrated their potential in being a student. So it kind of matters what your skills are and kind of what your potential is and what you have to offer. And I think great leaders are the ones who can sort of find and listen and learn what are the opportunities, what are those potentials that the team offers, and how do I assemble teams? How do I encourage collaboration in teams so that we as a team are able to really achieve? That's the saying of the we versus me. Let's attack these things as a group. I kind of crowdsource them versus tackling them on our own.
Yeah, that's right. And, I just got my SHRM magazine in the mail, George,
Yeah.
and the chief human resource officer for Cisco has a little blurb in there. And she says, the number one thing you can do with your people is find out what they're capable of.
Yes. Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
like so simple, but
It
we're
is.
not doing it. I don't know what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
like the work gets done through people. Find out what they're capable of. I love that.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
So also in the chapter about unlocking potential, you give a shout out to, all of us folks that are over 50, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you
Yeah.
talk about another Venn diagram, which is the what, how, and why of a human. What do they
Yeah.
know? What do they want, desire, and how do they do the things they do, their skills? So we talk a little bit about that diagram because that's how we can figure out what the potential is.
Yeah, this Venn diagram, like the last we talked about, really blends these three perspectives around having clarity of your goals, that vision, and having an expectation of kind of why this is important to me, what the outcome is that I'd like to achieve, but also being really clear and specific about what that outcome is. I think ambiguity is the enemy of success. You can
Hmm.
kind of have a lot of challenges if you're not clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. And then the thing that I think most people get hung up on, and the vast majority of the coaching that I do really focuses on, is getting people to realize the how is the easiest part. That we often kind of get wrapped up in the tools that we're using
Yeah.
or the project that we're managing or the activities that we're doing. And in most cases, the waste, the frustration, the issues we're experiencing are because there's not a clear what, and there's not been a good articulation as to why it's important and why we need that outcome. And when you have a clear what and you have a really clear articulation of why it's valuable, the how starts to become a lot more clear,
Oh,
because the
100%.
things that are not helping you get there are just not worth really focusing on. But ambiguity in the what and the why starts to create a lot of ambiguity in the how, where we start going in a lot of different directions. And that often is exactly why that project is late, or we really get frustrated with the situation we're in.
That's right. And the why we're doing it, I think, is so essential in terms of like the energy I'm going to give to this thing. right?
Right.
Because if you start with the how, it starts to sound, I'm going to use a four-letter word right here, everybody. It gets to be hard.
It
HARD.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you believe in it, you're like, "Oh, we can do that." But if you're like, "Oh, we gotta do that," that'll be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And, it's interesting in the sense that we often talk about micromanagers
Oh,
and how frustrating that is that somebody's micromanaging my process or my issues. And if you think about it, micromanagement is a function of getting involved in the how. And as a leader, as a manager, as a super performer, you really want to focus on making sure your team has the what and the why, and that it's really explicit and clear what and how we can determine that outcome, but also why it's important and sort of what options and flexibility there may be in that what. And then let them build those systems and processes to really own how we create that outcome. It's ideal formula.
yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And what you're saying, well, here's the thing about micromanaging. I got to say, since he brought it up, George, you brought it up.
Yeah.
So I got to talk about it for just a
Okay.
second.
Please. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
micromanaging, some people need to be micromanaged at the beginning of a process because what we're doing is we're putting expectations in place, and the why is a big part of the expectations. And so, you've heard me say this before, listeners, but I'll say it again. This is from Don Carroll. Uncommunicated expectations are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed, and then you overreact and you get in there and you micromanage. But if you did what George said and you got the why really, really clear and the what really clear and get the heck out of the way, you know what? And here's the thing, your people, back to the mount, what is it called? The mount of stupid.
Not stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, because your people are thinking, Nicole doesn't really know what she's talking about, right? But if they respect you and you
Yeah.
let their genius shine, they're gonna just love you anyways. Okay. So good.
Yeah.
All right, I love what you're
Well,
saying.
one more point maybe
Yeah.
on point of micromanagement, and it's in a later chapter. Again, with the experience of coaching all of these process improvement professionals who are working often on projects that are like transformational for that
Right. Change
organization,
stuff, right?
really, really big changes that are happening. You're really never able to just set that goal. It's a lot like setting a goal to say, I'm going to earn a PhD. Well, yeah, that's a great goal,
Hmm.
and people who attain that really have put a lot of work into that outcome. But no one wakes up every morning working on that thinking it's going to feel so good to have doctor in front of my name. And that's the whole purpose, right? They break that bigger goal into smaller goals. And I think this question around what, why, and how, when I'm trying to help a team achieve something, it's really got, an enormous weight of it, teaching them to take the big thing and break it into smaller things. Take the big what and make it a smaller what. Take the big why and make it a smaller why. And if we're struggling to meet those timelines, struggling to have that success, break it down again and break it down again until we are achieving that success. We are kind of overcoming that barrier. So this is to me a universal truth. It's just a question
Oh,
of,
that's a
am
big,
I going to
don't miss
give
that,
people
everybody. Universal truth. This means it's real, real.
exactly. Are we gonna have like a big what and give teams a lot of autonomy, or are we gonna have a small what and really try to check in with them and help them progress with a lot more detail?
So good. And the reason why I had to interrupt you, George, is
Oh,
because universal truths are hard to come by.
they are.
And when I do training with people, I'm like, okay, listen, y'all, this is just true. Like
Yes.
if you argue with it, you're not arguing with me. You're arguing
Yeah.
with the universe. Okay. And that's a no-win. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. A lot of the folks that have been in my classes or training or coaching will probably laugh at this because I talk about this universal truth,
Yeah.
and it really is breaking the big rocks into small
Mm,
rocks. If you're talking about any process improvement methodology, if you're talking about any problem solving tools, really anything at all, no matter what you name it, what book it came from, they all follow the same logic.
absolutely.
Take the big thing and make it into a small thing.
That's right. And, so I have this coaching methodology that I use. And instead of saying goal setting, I say this thing, what is our next right step?
Yes.
Like,
Target condition.
yeah, just this little thing that we could do. Like, get
Yeah.
us, and then as John, who wrote the change management books, help me. He says in his 8-step process, he says, get a small win.
Yes.
Just get a small win. You don't need this.
Yeah.
This big, huge thing.
Yeah, it's exactly the formula that Toyota uses in the Toyota production system. It's called a target condition. It's just taking the big thing and breaking it into what is that very specific thing that's kind of preventing me, is in my way. It's the barrier that I have to overcome. Yeah, it's a universal truth. It exists really in all great thinking when it comes to change or improvement.
That's right. That's right. And it's also making this thing bubble up in my mind, like the five whys. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? I mean, it's just so good. Okay, very good.
Are you ready to build your vibrant culture? Bring Nicole Greer to speak to your leadership team, conference, or organization to help them with their strategies, systems, and smarts to increase clarity, accountability, energy, and results. Your organization will get lit from within. Email her at nicole@vibrantculture.com and be sure to check out Nicole's TEDx talk at vibrantculture.com.
All right, so unlocking potential. I just want to kind of poke on page 58 and 59.
Yeah.
You give people an outline for action. So, one thing I love about your book, and so people go get the book, Superperformance, is that this has got actionable, applicable stuff. Okay. And so that's what we all want in this world. You say no matter where or when or who is involved, if you can create clarity, you can make decisions and take action. When you eliminate ambiguity, you erase doubt. When the direction becomes obvious, you act instinctually. You have utility. And the thing I'm poking on is you have utility. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, utility is a term that I've used, and it often kind of raises eyebrows because so many people talk about value and creating value. It goes back to the little league example that is a lagging measure. It is a score of the game of, did a customer buy? Did somebody agree? Did they support? And that determines whether something has value. Utility is your capacity, your capability to create value. And I think utility is such an important perspective for anyone who wants to be that super performer, wants to really achieve their potential, because it's about being prepared to execute and being
Mm,
able to take the skill, the knowledge that you have, and be able to apply it, be able to use it. And when you have teams that are kind of hungry, kind of thirsty for the problems, for the opportunities, they have great utility because there's a capacity for them to execute. There's a capacity for them to create value and to solve problems or to create, great products. So utility is a leading indicator of your ability to execute, your ability to deliver.
mm, so good. And, here's the thing about careers. I bet you this happened to you. And Georgie, you were in the military, correct?
Almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, there's differences between soldiers, right? And there's differences between employees. And
So
utility is like when the leader stops and thinks, who should I get to do this? And they're like, get George, get Nicole. She can do it. She'll figure it out. It's like this
yeah,
figure outer thing or something. I call it figure outer.
it is. I actually I just had an article, an opinion piece published in fortune.com.
Nice.
It actually talks about utility and AI. And I think there's a huge application around what AI can do for knowledge. It's the ultimate librarian. You have
Oh
a
my
question,
God.
it's going to be able to retrieve and provide those answers. But there's a difference, in my opinion, between knowledge and skill. Skill is your ability to potentially apply that knowledge. It's playing a musical instrument or driving a car. And I think about teaching both of my sons to drive, and the knowledge of what are the rules of the road and how does an automobile operate. That's the easiest part. And that's exactly what AI knows. The part that has now taken 10 years and probably will take another 5 or more is the actual driving part, the actual application of that knowledge. And I think that's where people can really leverage tools like AI. It's also how they can approach problems, to say, it's not how much I know, it's what I can do. And what I can do is going to be measured by your utility. It's your ability to execute.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's how I got ahead in my career. It was just I tried stuff and I did stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I
Right.
never once did I say, "Oh, that's not my job." I thought, "Oh, I bet you
Yeah.
that's my job." That was my
Yeah.
attitude. So that makes you a super performer. Okay, now I just
Yeah.
said this whole thing about expectations, but chapter 3. Says
Yeah.
escape from the prison of expectations. Okay, so we've got a dichotomy or something going on here. Talk about escaping from the prison of expectations.
Yeah. You mentioned in my bio, my introduction, I talk about my candor. This has gotten me in trouble more than once,
Oh, candor will
where
do it, but
I've offended people, and it's because I'm trying to speak a truth, and the truth is that if you create goals that have incredible visibility, where we're really, really making sure that if you don't deliver, there's going to be a problem, then when people know that failure is not an option, it's going to create embarrassment or worse, then they're very careful about what that goal is. They're going to negotiate that goal. And what's going to happen is even if they're capable of kind of going beyond that goal, doing something that may be amazing, there's little incentive to do that because if I do something absolutely amazing, then what is going to be the expectation next time? That I'm gonna have to continue to do those
that's
amazing
right.
things,
That's
and
right.
now the bar got raised. Now, if you think about it, as an owner, as somebody who'd like to kinda get performance out of an organization, that's what I want. I want the bar to raise, and I want everyone to be doing their best, and I think that's what my team does. But then when you go look at the situation and say, "Well, how many times has the team failed? How many times did they not deliver?" And the leadership says, "Never. My team always delivers." And I said, well,
Mm,
they're locked in the prison of expectations because what they've done is they've negotiated something they can always do. And how do you know that you're truly free? Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you don't hit those objectives because you're basically leaving it all on the field every time you play. And when those players leave it all on the field, they don't win every game, but they walk away knowing that there's nothing left, nothing else I could have done to win. There's a really big difference, between that and a team that just continues to kind of play against the JV squad so that we have a flawless record. That's really what the prison of expectations is kind of holding yourself back so that you can always win.
mm. That is so good. And I think what's at the root of that is like ego takes over or something. Right? It's like we don't want to look stupid. We don't be on the mount of stupid again. Right? But I think, one of the things I always say, George, is I say, like everything gets to be messy if
Yes.
it needs to be, you know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the culture of allowing failure is, I think, a valuable one because, again, if you're always winning, it's like sales. I've got friends who are just amazing sales professionals. And what they'll say is that if you're going to raise price on a particular product, you don't really know if you've raised the price high enough until you have a customer say no,
That's
until
right.
someone says, "Well, I'm not going to buy it anymore." I think it's the same thing with performance. It's the same thing with potential. If everyone is always winning, they're not fulfilling their potential because they're really not stretching themselves into territory that they've never been able to achieve. They're not setting goals that are potentially higher than what they could have done. It's okay if you don't hit it as long as you left it all on the field and you learn from it. You kind of understand what were those root causes of my success, but also what were those barriers and problems that we would do differently next time. That's how organizations really ladder up. That's how they get that next level.
Yeah. People next level, organization equal sign next level. That's how that works.
Exactly.
That's an absolute truth too, by the way. Write that one
Yeah,
down, everybody. All right.
for
So
sure.
I love that. Chapter 4, you mentioned this just a little bit ago, but let's
Yeah,
poke on it again. Learn the potential of we versus me. Okay. So this is going to talk a little bit about like maybe teams and collaboration and communication and all the things everybody tells me they need.
right. Yeah, again, it's a little bit of what you mentioned earlier around ego,
Hmm.
and I think leaders can have what I might call main character syndrome, where they kinda start looking at things as the spokes around the hub, and they are the hub, and everything kind of radiates out from them. And the reality is that there's no organization ever that was the spoke and wheel, spoke and hub that succeeded at the same degree that a decentralized, empowered organization can,
Mm,
because you can only be in one place at one time doing one thing. So as soon as leaders recognize that it's going to be a far better organization that I don't need to be here. If I articulated a what, I've articulated a why, and teams are now taking those things and using and building systems and really stretching themselves to achieve outcomes. there's going to be a lot more happening, a lot more getting done than I could have ever done on my own. And that concept of really recognizing that you're not the main character in the story, that every one of those people creating value should be the main character, and you're just there to support them.
Mm, I love that. So, in my mind, when you said you're there to support them and you're not at the center of the hub, I went to Robert Greenleaf's upside down pyramid servant
Exactly.
leadership thing in my mind immediately. So, if y'all don't know that one, that's a really oldie moldy. That's from the 70s, everybody. Get that
Yeah,
book out and read it. But it says that the leader empowers and then all the great process goes this direction instead of like top down, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so good.
Yeah.
All right, so on page 95, you have this header that says assertiveness and the ugly baby. Could you please explain?
Yeah. Yeah, this is again one that sometimes it's a funny story.
I love
Uh,
stories.
being able to tell people the truth. We often use the word collaboration.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when people use that word, I think they use it as just a conversational term of what collaboration is. But not many people have really explored that definition or really tried to understand, well, what exactly is collaboration?
Mm,
And there's a lot that's written, and we talk a little bit about the definition from our perspective, my perspective in the book. But it's really about being able to speak your mind and be able to tell people exactly what you think in an environment where people are completely open minded to listening. So when you have people who are listening and you have people who are speaking what their perception, their belief is, you're in a place where you can collaborate. So the ugly baby is a technique that I've used with teams for years
I
where we
love it.
basically we basically introduce something that really gives people license to be critical. And I use that story of the ugly baby in the sense that if you think about a parent with their new baby, I can think of my father holding me as a child and saying, "Look at the ears on this kid." And, being able to say, "Okay, yeah, you're right. He has pretty big ears. So there is a little bit of an ugly baby here." But we can also then talk about how his nose isn't quite right because dad already kind of said there's some things about the kid that's a little bit weird. So I'm not going to offend anyone. And we can have this very open truth. When leaders can put aside that ego and say, the system that we've put in place, the one that I led, the one that I've championed,
Hmm.
it has some issues. And there are some things about it that if I could go back, I would change. And everyone's going to look at each other and say, "Oh, we can start talking about this now."
Right,
like, you
hot
know,
dang, because I got issues with this sucker. It's bad.
but if the first sentence is, "Look at my beautiful baby,"
Uh-oh.
then yeah, that's an absolutely gorgeous baby. Right.
Mm, that's so good. That's so good. And so that thing you're talking about, the candor thing, I say in my trainings all the time, George, I'm like, would you all like for me to practice truth telling, honesty, and candor?
Yeah.
And 99.9999% of people will be like, yeah, like
Right.
don't tell us a fib. Don't t you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
So introducing this and being assertive about it, I think is really important. And I think the other thing that you're talking about, just for my own clarity, I'm thinking about what you're saying is that
Yeah.
we need to be able to give and receive feedback. We need to know how to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many things where you can kind of trace these same concepts. You also often hear about active listening, and it's something that's really hard
Mhm.
to practice because we often will start thinking about the next thing we're going to say while somebody else is speaking to us. And what that means is we're really kind of pursuing our agenda or our argument, not really being open-minded and trying to process and understand what somebody else's perspective is. And that's the definition of empathy, really understanding somebody
Mhm.
else's perspective. So, good collaboration, active listening, they all have these same kind of give and get relationships that if you're not really trying to listen, if you're not really trying to see things through somebody else's eyes, but also being willing to tell them what your beliefs are and have them be able to listen as actively, you're not really in that beautiful place of collaboration. You're probably compromising or even competing
Oh,
because there's agendas that we're trying to push each other with.
So good. And as you're talking about it and you brought in the listening, one of the other things everybody who's ever listened to this podcast knows is that I want all of you to go get a little coaching certificate from somewhere. Like sign up, go to the ICF website, and go there and find a program. There's ones that are $1,500 and ones that are $150,000. Pick one in your price range and do that because, George, don't you think, in your experience, the best thing I have ever learned in my life is to listen and to ask a good question.
Oh, could not agree more. I
Oh my God.
We teach a rather expensive class for really large corporations that basically send us their best and their brightest to become expert problem solvers, expert facilitators, to drive change and improvement in their organizations. And it's basically a 6-month long program.
Nice.
And I tell everyone at the very beginning of that program that all we're really going to do is teach them how to ask questions. Now, there's a lot of fancy tools and statistics and data and facilitative techniques and things that are going to definitely help give you lots of kinds of questions to ask. But once you kind of master the art of recognizing that questions are going to be the key to opening conversation, and conversation is where answers are going to exist, and the more specific questions you can ask, the more detailed the conversation becomes. As soon as people kind of figure out that formula, then they're going to be super performers because it really is the core, it is the heart.
Right. And if you're asking lots of good questions, you'll get your what and your why and your how all figured out. And if you
You
don't
will.
ask good questions, you don't listen, you're walking out of that meeting with no what, no how, no why. It's a mess. All right. So see everybody,
Absolutely.
me harping on the questions. Even George agrees with me and he's super smart.
Why
Okay.
wouldn't
All right. So on page 100, which I think
Yeah,
is profound that it's page
yeah,
100, you talk
yeah.
about building cooperativeness. So, one aha I got from George's book, everybody, is that collaboration requires cooperativeness. Say cooperativeness. That's a challenging, it's got so many syllables and vowels,
It
everybody.
is.
All right. So, you point out in here what's your personality type. And so, George, I bet you know all the personality assessments in the world. I'm certified in like half of them
Sure.
because I think, okay, so here's my powerful question, George. What is it like to experience you? That's my powerful question.
That's a great
Isn't that
I
great?
love it. It is a great question, and, there are so many of those personality assessments out there, but I do kind of believe in the Jung theory that, core, that we all have a personality type, that
Oh,
there
yes.
are these natural abilities that are kind of our preferences that we have. So when you ask me the question, "What is it like to experience me?" My personality is one in a professional setting where I'm going to need to be extroverted. I'm going to need to kind of put myself out there. I'm going to need to make sure that you hear my opinion and I really want to interact with you, to listen, to learn, to understand. But my wife, my family knows me as somebody who really would like to be the wallflower at the wedding and not necessarily go and work the tables of, introducing and
That's right. Meeting all the
seeing.
cousins and the aunties. That's not your thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm an introvert who is an intuitive thinker, who sees things from the big picture, who makes decisions with facts. And I also have the perceiving personality type. And it drives my wife absolutely insane because I'm really about letting it ride. Let's figure it out at the last minute, make sure we have all of our options on the table. And thankfully, she's the eternal planner, making sure that we have some structure and organization to our lives.
God love her. She keeps it straight, doesn't she? God.
She does
All right.
in so
So
many
I
ways.
think you just told us your Myers-Briggs. Is that what you just did?
I did.
Okay. What is your Myers-Briggs? So everybody listen up. Myers-Briggs, Jungian. Okay. So this mother-daughter team, Myers-Briggs, reads Carl's stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, this is good stuff. And they
Yep.
create the Myers-Briggs. It's been around for a bazillion decades, and it's really good stuff. Tell us what yours is and why you like the Myers-Briggs. I'm curious.
Yeah. So mine's, I just described the INTP,
Yeah,
which is my 4 letters. And yeah, the Myers Briggs kind of organization basically didn't create personality type. They created a mechanism for trying to understand your personality type.
yeah, yeah.
And I really love the Myers Briggs. And I know that it has, some controversy and challenges, But I think, those controversies and challenges are when you look at it too superficially. When you look at it as a tool, like any other tool, and it's just one piece of information alongside all kinds of other pieces of information, I think it can provide a lot of great insight and it
Hmm.
can provide a lot of really, really good direction. And I've been certified in it for well over 20 years now. And every single one of those students that I've trained, we use it in our training programs to help them understand themselves so that they can better support the teams they train and that they interact with.
So good. Okay, so don't miss that. This is one of the mirrors that you can turn inward and take a look at. What is it like to experience you? The Myers-Briggs. Both George and I are certified in this thing. So all you got to do is give us a call and we'll set you up. We can get your team trained up
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the S in my Shine coaching methodology, the S is self-assessment. Like you can't know what it's like to experience you if you don't sit your fanny in a chair and you look at what it's like. And people, I don't know if they do this to you, George, but they take the assessment and they're like, I'm not sure this is right.
Well, yeah, no, every
And I'm
time,
like, you took it.
every time. And I'll tell you a quick story that I think you'll find very humorous. I shared my personality type as INTP. And of
Hmm.
course, the P, the perceiving, as I described it, was really, my preference is to basically let it ride
Yeah,
and
let's see
to
what happens.
just sort of work things out as they get to the finish line. And my wife is structured, organized. She's the one who has a list, making sure that we're on schedule,
She's a
everything is
J.
working. She's a J. She gets satisfaction from closure. If there's a
Hmm.
decision we can make, let's make it and get it behind us. So you mentioned earlier that I'm a veteran and I spent a good
Thank you.
part of my career in the Army. And when I first was introduced to the Myers-Briggs assessment tool, I came out as an INTJ and it was strong. The clarity was 100% clear. And for a long time, I told people I was an INTJ. I even went to this certification, and was kind of carrying this INTJ perspective. And then my wife and I were having a conversation about personality and work, and I was explaining the whole Myers Briggs thing, and I was telling her what I thought her personality type might be,
Well, that could
and it
be
was
a
all
mistake with your wife. Be careful.
yeah. Well, so as I do all that, she looks at me with this puzzled look, like,
Hmm.
what do you mean that you're that J thing? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm very
Oh,
structured,
yes.
organized, planned, because in the military, that was the definition of success was to be organized, structured, and planned. In corporate America, that's what gets you promoted. That's what we want. We want rules, we want structure, we want
Hmm.
organization. And in that moment, I realized I was not being honest with myself. Your analogy of looking in the mirror, I wasn't looking in the mirror. I was seeing who I wanted to see in the mirror, not who I really was. And when I gave myself license to really be honest with myself, that opened up an entirely new door for me where I realized, yes, I have to have an ability to be structured and organized, but my natural preference is to let it ride, and that has been something that has served me as a
Evolutionary, I bet.
yeah, as an entrepreneur, not having a full-time day job, if you will. Being a P has been an asset because I'm okay if we don't have anything happening now because it'll all work out. Don't worry. Where, the J would be like, no, we need to be 38 days out from our revenue. you
Lord. Yeah. Challenging. Yeah, so good, and thank you for your service.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you
thank
for your
you.
service.
No.
Okay, so what rank and where in the Army, just real quick, because I got people in
Yeah,
my
yeah,
family
yeah,
who are
yeah.
in this, I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah, I was lieutenant, and I was in Fort Stewart, Georgia, primarily, and it's
Hot.
actually one of the opening stories in my book. I was a chemical officer that ended up being a tank platoon leader,
Mhm.
and it was kind of a really weird set of circumstances, thankful set of circumstances, and, yeah, I had an absolutely wonderful military experience. Mine was more like an extended camping trip compared to a lot of our veterans here in the last 20 years having a very different experience. So mine was definitely formative, but not the same as many.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for signing up. That's what I got to say about that. All
No.
right. So chapter 5, you say, okay, so listen to this, everybody. Find the friction and lower the temperature.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about friction. What are you talking about there? And then how do I get it to go away? How do I lube this
Yeah.
thing up?
Yeah. Well, you think of like an engine.
right?
Engine without lubrication kind of creates heat. And an engine is what? An engine is a bunch of mechanical parts kind of rubbing against each other. So I think about a team, a business, an office, a manufacturing floor is like a machine. It's like an engine. And without lubrication, it rubs against itself and it generates a lot of heat.
Mhm.
Especially, a lot of manufacturing operations, the chaos that occurs on that manufacturing floor can be really, really intense. And finding the hot spots, finding the places where that friction is the greatest, there's a lot of ways to think about it. The tip that I'll give your listeners, the secret that I don't usually share,
Oh,
is I look for my dad. And what I mean by that is my dad was a guy who worked in the same factory for 42
oh,
years.
God love him.
And when anything broke, he was the guy who came out to fix it
Mm.
because he knew everything. He had been there for forever. And if he wasn't working that day, then there were going to be problems because nobody else knew how to take care of it. And what I have found is whether I'm looking and working in a hotel or I'm looking or working in a manufacturing floor or helping a sales team, the same thing exists. My dad is somewhere in that organization and he swoops in with his cape and
Yep.
he helps correct and fix the hot spot to keep us all running. So instead of going through some crazy analysis or audit or process to kind of figure things out, ask yourself who would be the person in your team, your organization, that if you lost them today, if they didn't return to work,
Mm.
would be devastating. It would be so incredibly costly. And then ask yourself how often that person puts on their cape. Because if you follow them around with what they're doing when they have that cape, you're going to find all the hot spots. And then it's just a question of making those processes work, making them synchronize, making that system have some lubrication versus us going in and just fixing it every time it breaks.
Yeah. And in my mind and in my heart, it is screaming. And it's also like, who are you going to get to figure out, what this person is doing and learn from them? They need an apprentice. There's an old-fashioned word for y'all, apprentice immediately, so that we
Yeah.
can pass the cape to the next person or get them their own cape, right?
Oh, and the golden hour concept, I kind of use the term finding the root cause of your success.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been able to do in the practice is help organizations with exactly what you're pointing out, that we have these employees retiring
Oh my gosh,
and
y'all.
those 5 whys that you talked about,
Yes.
when we sit down and we ask, kind of the change that you make, the fix that you put in place, the processes that you use, why are you doing it that way? And what's the benefit of that? And why are you using those tools? And why are you using this approach? And really trying to gain that knowledge, because if you can gain that knowledge, you can practice that skill. But if you don't have that knowledge, then you're not going to have that skill and we're going to have, that hot spot in the process.
That's right. We're right back to the Venn diagram. So I will tell you, we also have talked about like getting the potential out of people. There is a human that wants to learn what the superhero knows. And we
Yes.
just don't know who that is, or we haven't had the conversations. We've got to have the conversations, just like I read in the Sherm magazine this morning. Okay. All right. So gosh, we only have 3 minutes left.
Oh goodness.
I know, and we're not all the way there yet. But I want to kind of poke on two things. Okay. So the next chapter is make focus your friend. All right.
Yeah.
Then we have build an improvement factory, which that is money right there. Build an improvement factory, which means look at your processes, look at your stuff, continuous quality improvement. There's an old fashioned thing. Find the root cause. We've touched on that a little bit. Learn a trade and deliberately improve. But the thing I want to poke on is that improvement factory. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that? How could I put that in my business? How could we work on the business instead of in the business so much? There's a good one.
Yes. Yeah. And I think people make this way more complicated than it has to be.
Absolutely.
So if we boil it down to the simplest place, having change happen in your organization, having improvement happen is going to be like a factory. You're going to have raw material, you're going to have downtime, you're going to have waste, you're going to have a capacity. There's only so many things you can do in so many ways. And if you start thinking of it like managing the deliverables to your customer, but you're now the customer as the business. So working on the business is now I'm going to be my customer And I'm going to think about what is the highest priority problems and what are the best resources or people. And is there going to be quality in the work that they do so that we don't have to come back and do it again?
Mm.
All of the metrics that you need, all of the systems that you might go out and pay a consultant or a trainer to do are in front of you if you just run your improvement like you run your business. And it is absolutely a foolproof formula that I hope your listeners really take advantage of.
Yeah, I do too. And so, George, I have just had the best time talking to you about this. Because here's the thing, I'm a competitive gal, and I just think people underestimate the fun of winning. I don't
Yes.
know. When I was a little girl, I used to play like these games with my grandmother Mert, and she would never let me win. She was
Yeah.
fierce. She was like, we're playing Battleship. Like we'd go get my brother's Battleship game out of his bedroom, and we would play Battleship, and she would never
Yeah.
let me win. We'd play Monopoly, and then guess what happened? I got smart enough to win
Yeah.
sometimes, not every time. you know
Yeah.
but like winning is really fun, and performance, it gives you like an actual neuropeptide bath out of your hypothalamus gland when like you do
Yes.
something well. It's good for your health.
Yes.
it's,
It is.
it's so
It
fun.
is. And I think that's kind of core to the book Superperformance,
Yeah.
because what we are saying, and this goes back to my nonprofit, the Capacity to Care, is that even the crustiest, angriest, most frustrated steel mill employee who
Yep.
really just didn't want to spend any time talking to me about anything
Hmm.
goes home to a little granddaughter who thinks he's a superhero, and he's showing up to work every day. He's putting on those boots and he's slogging through 10, 12-hour shifts that are really challenging.
Of course.
He's winning. He's winning because he's providing for his family. And when you can tap into that desire to win,
Hmm.
because we can not just win, we can help the next generation win. We can keep this mill open. We can help people understand the trade that you've created and developed, and people can respect you. Respect and winning are, I think, similar
Oh,
in triggering that hypothalamus.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And here's the thing about, well, two things you just threw in there. George just
Yeah.
throws these things in there at the last second, y'all. Okay, so one thing about the next generation, don't miss what he just said. That gentleman that goes home to his granddaughter and she may be living with him. Don't miss
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so this is two generations, right? Because it's the granddaughter. And I don't know about you, George. Everybody's like, what do you think about this next generation? I'm like, well, I think about them just like everybody thought about me.
Right.
That I'm a
Exactly.
hot mess and I don't know anything. I'm on
Yeah.
Mount Stupid. And
Yeah.
so that's how it is. And
It
we
is.
need to be leaders that help people come into their greatness, into their potential, like you talk about in the book. So
Exactly.
it's the next generation is always going to be part of your project.
It is.
That's
Yeah, it
that's
is.
it.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
then you said this thing about he goes to work and he slogs through these long days and respect. Here's the thing. The reason why he might be crusty and angry is because nobody realizes what he does in a 12-hour day. And you said earlier,
exactly.
don't miss what George said earlier. He said, go follow this person around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Gosh, so
yeah,
good.
yeah. Respect is such a powerful tool that providing it can open so many doors for you. And many of those people who have that closed, crusty, angry kind of personality at work, it is because they've been disrespected or they feel or perceive a lack of respect. And flipping that script can just transform a department, an employee, an organization.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. All right, everybody. That's been another vibrant episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. And we have had George Pesansky, the author of Super Performance, on the show. Will you please go buy the book? George needs lunch money. And so if you buy the book, you'll get the 8 strategies to reach your full potential, yourself, your team, and your organization. All right, George, tell them where they can find you so they can hire you.
Yeah, thank you. So the book is available everywhere. And also, if you go to my website, georgepesansky.com, you can get both the book, but you can also contact us. And also all of the articles we write, all the podcasts we have. And then my company, myblendedlearning.com, certainly available to help your organization, training, culture development, process improvement. We'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, George, we're brother and sister from another mother. We love the culture.
Absolutely.
We love the culture. All right, it's been great to be with you, everybody. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for listening. Will you do this just real quick? Go down, click like, and write, a 3-word sentence. I love George or something like that. That helps us get this on the radar for people. Thanks again, George. It was great to be with you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more like-minded listeners. Remember, the journey to building a vibrant culture never stops. Stay inspired, keep nurturing your vibrant culture, and we can't wait to reconnect with you on the next exciting episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.